Try and visualize handing the key to your home, your darkest secrets, and your very life to someone you loved without a single doubt in your heart, only to wake up one morning and realize they were quietly handing weapons to your worst enemies behind your back. The sudden, suffocating coldness in your chest isn't just grief, it's the terrifying realization that you were sharing your life with a total stranger. Betrayal is the most ruthless filter in human existence. It strips away every illusion, shatters every sweet lie, and forces you to see people exactly as they are, not as you wish them to be. What is the invisible mark of a traitor sitting right next to you at this very moment? Why do the deepest cuts always come from the hands you held the tightest? And how did the ancient Stoics turn the crushing agony of betrayal into the ultimate blueprint for emotional invincibility? Stick with me, because what you are about to discover will forever change the way you look at every person in your life. To understand the brutal reality of betrayal, consider the life of Scipio Africanus, the military genius who literally saved the city of Rome from total extinction. When the terrifying Carthaginian general Hannibal was slaughtering Roman armies, burning cities, and standing at the very gates of the capital, it was Scipio who stepped into the arena. He marched into Africa, defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, and secured Rome's survival and supremacy over the Mediterranean. He was hailed as a god, paraded through the streets, and showered with praise. Yet, only a few years later, when the threat had passed and Rome was safe, the very politicians and citizens who owed their lives to Scipio turned on him like a pack of rabid wolves. Driven by petty jealousy and fear of his immense popularity, senators fabricated false accusations of corruption against him. They dragged Rome's greatest hero through the mud, forcing him into public trials just to humiliate him. Scipio didn't fight back with anger. On the anniversary of his great victory over Hannibal, he walked into the Senate, tore up his financial ledgers in front of his accusers, and walked away from the city he had saved. He retreated to a small country estate in Laternum, spending the rest of his days in quiet isolation. Before he died, broken-hearted by the ingratitude of his own people, he ordered that he be buried far away from Rome, leaving behind an epitaph carved into stone that haunts history to this day: "Ungrateful country, you shall not even possess my bones." Let that sink in. Scipio learned the hardest truth of human nature: people will love you, praise you, and stand by your side only as long as you are useful to them. The moment the crisis passes, the moment your success threatens their fragile egos, or the moment they no longer need what you provide, their loyalty evaporates like morning mist. This reveals the first catastrophic pattern of betrayal, the betrayal of convenience. Notice how certain people are fiercely loyal to you when you are fighting their battles, solving their problems, or elevating their social standing. They text you every day, tell you how much they value your friendship, and swear they will always have your back. But the second you stop being a resource, the second you fall into hardship or set a healthy boundary that prevents them from using you, their warmth instantly turns to ice. They don't just leave, they act as if you were the one who failed them. Now, consider an even darker form of betrayal, one that takes place not out of ingratitude, but out of pure, cold ambition. 0. When Alexander the Great's army was sweeping across Asia, the Persian Emperor Darius III was fleeing for his life. Riding alongside Darius was his most trusted cousin and top regional commander, a man named Bessus. Bessus had sworn sacred oaths of fealty to Darius. He had eaten at the emperor's table, commanded his armies, and promised to defend him to the death. As Alexander's cavalry drew near, Bessus realized that staying loyal to Darius meant facing death or capture. The emperor was no longer powerful, he was a liability. So in the dead of night, while Darius slept in his royal tent, Bessus and his co-conspirators crept in. They didn't just abandon their leader, they threw Darius into iron chains, bound him in a wooden cart, and dragged him along as a bargaining chip. When Alexander's scouts closed in, Bessus realized he couldn't escape while dragging a captive king. Without a second thought, Bessus drew his spear, stabbed his own emperor multiple times in the chest, and left him bleeding to death in the dirt on the side of a deserted road. When Alexander the Great finally found the abandoned cart, the mighty king of Persia was taking his last, agonizing breaths, murdered not by his enemies, but by the very man he called brother. This brings us to the second devastating pattern, the betrayal of self-preservation. There are people in your circle right now who seem completely loyal simply because the cost of loyalty is cheap. They share your meals, laugh at your jokes, and walk beside you when the weather is fine. But the moment a real storm hits, the moment your reputation is challenged, the moment a group turns against you, or the moment standing by your side requires them to make a personal sacrifice, they will throw you to the wolves without a single moment of hesitation. They won't just stand by and watch you suffer, they will participate in your destruction just to prove to the crowd that they aren't associated with your decline. Let's look at another silent, insidious pattern that rots relationships from the inside out, the betrayal of weaponized vulnerability. To see how this operates, consider the tragic relationship between the Byzantine Emperor Justinian and his legendary general, Belisarius. Belisarius was arguably the greatest military mind of his era. He conquered Italy, defeated the Ostrogoths, and reclaimed vast territories for the empire. He was completely, unflinchingly loyal to Justinian. Whenever Belisarius won a victory, he dedicated the glory entirely to his emperor. He refused crowns, rejected bribes, and turned down opportunities to make himself ruler. Yet, Justinian possessed a dark, paranoid soul. Every time Belisarius achieved another impossible victory, Justinian didn't feel gratitude, he felt intense, burning insecurity. He became obsessed with the thought that Belisarius's greatness made Justinian look small. Justinian began to quietly sabotage his own general. He withheld supplies and reinforcements while Belisarius was surrounded by enemy armies. He invited Belisarius back to court under the guise of celebration, only to strip him of his command, seize his private fortune, and spread rumors across the capital to ruin his character. According to ancient accounts, Justinian eventually had his greatest general blinded, leaving Belisarius to beg for bread in the streets of Constantinople, a hero destroyed by the very man whose throne he had built. Have you ever confided your deepest fears, your past mistakes, or your hidden insecurities to someone you trusted, only to watch them use those exact confessions as weapons against you the second you have a disagreement? This is the third pattern, the betrayal of weaponized intimacy. A true friend treats your vulnerabilities as a sacred trust. But a toxic, envious person collects your secrets like ammunition. They listen to your painful stories with a sympathetic smile, pretending to care, while secretly storing every detail in their mind. The moment you achieve something that triggers their jealousy, or the moment an argument breaks out, they draw those secrets like poison daggers and thrust them straight into your weakest points. The Stoics recognize that betrayal is never really about the person who was betrayed, it is a profound exposure of the traitor's internal corruption. When someone breaks your trust, they are broadcasting to the entire world that their character is cheap, their integrity is for sale, and their soul is governed by fear, greed, or envy. Epictetus used to remind his students that when a person acts falsely toward you, they have harmed themselves far more than they could ever harm you. They have traded their virtue and honor, the only things of true value, for a moment of cheap advantage or bitter revenge. They are left with a broken spirit, while you are left merely with a lesson. So how do you navigate a world where betrayal sits in the shadow of almost every human interaction? How do you keep your heart open to genuine human connection without leaving yourself constantly exposed to deception? The remaining patterns of betrayal expose the deepest, most subtle psychological traps that people use to undermine your peace, including the betrayal of passive sabotage, the betrayal of false praise, and the ultimate Stoic protocol that makes it impossible for anyone's dishonesty to ever ruin your life again. And now let's dive into the fourth pattern of betrayal, one that is far more dangerous because it hides behind a mask of smiling support, the betrayal of passive sabotage. Consider the tragic life of Flavius Stilicho, one of the greatest military commanders in the late Roman Empire. Stilicho was a barbarian by blood, but he was fiercely, unquestioningly loyal to Rome. When the Visigoths under Alaric invaded, threatening to burn Rome to the ground, it was Stilicho who marched his troops through snow-covered mountains, outmaneuvered the invaders, and saved the empire time and time again. Sitting on the throne was a young, weak emperor named Honorius. Honorius was incapable of leading armies or making bold decisions. He spent his days in a secluded palace, feeding his pet chickens while Stilicho bled on the battlefields to protect his crown. Instead of honoring Stilicho, the court advisors surrounding Honorius began to whisper poisoned words into the emperor's ear. They played on his deep insecurities. They told Honorius, "Stilicho is too powerful. The people love him more than they love you. He is secretly plotting to take your throne." Honorius didn't confront Stilicho like a man. He didn't ask for an explanation. Instead, he initiated a campaign of passive sabotage. He withheld pay from Stilicho's soldiers, ignored his military dispatches, and quietly turned the Roman populace against the very protector who kept them alive. When Stilicho realized his own emperor was actively working to destroy him, he refused to start a civil war. He voluntarily walked into a church in Ravenna, surrendered his sword, and allowed himself to be executed without raising a hand in anger. Within months of Stilicho's death, Alaric and his Visigoths marched unopposed into Rome and sacked the Eternal City, a catastrophe created entirely by the cowardly jealousy of a ruler who destroyed his own shield. Let that sink in. This is the betrayal of passive sabotage. It comes from the people who claim to be on your team, but secretly root for your failure. They won't attack you openly because they are too cowardly for direct confrontation. Instead, they drop subtle, passive-aggressive remarks to undermine your confidence. They forget to give you vital information. They give you bad advice wrapped in fake concern. They delay their help when you need it most, hoping you will stumble so they can stand over your failure and offer fake sympathy. Now, look at the fifth pattern, a pattern so sinister it uses affection as a dagger, the betrayal of false flattery. To understand how this operates, look at the rise and fall of Lucius Aelius Sejanus, the chief commander of the Praetorian Guard under the Roman Emperor Tiberius. Tiberius was an old, cynical emperor who hated the political circus of Rome. Sejanus recognized this weakness and exploited it with terrifying perfection. He showered Tiberius with endless, grand compliments. He anticipated the emperor's every desire, managed his daily burdens, and constantly told Tiberius that he was the only person in Rome who truly cared about the emperor's safety and legacy. Tiberius trusted Sejanus completely, eventually retreating to the island of Capri and handing total operational control of the empire to his beloved friend. While Tiberius was resting on his island, believing he was protected by a loyal guardian, Sejanus was systematically poisoning Tiberius's family members, executing potential heirs, and positioning himself to seize the imperial throne. The very man who praised Tiberius the loudest in public was quietly digging his grave in private. When Tiberius finally discovered the truth through an intercepted letter, the shock almost destroyed him. The emperor realized that every compliment, every smile, and every act of devotion from Sejanus had been a calculated lie designed to put him to sleep before the strike. Beware of those who shower you with unnatural, constant flattery. A true friend will tell you the harsh truth to your face, even when it hurts, because they care about your soul. A traitor will feed your ego with sweet lies, agreeing with every bad decision you make, inflating your pride until you walk straight off a cliff. Flattery is the anesthesia that the traitor injects before they perform the amputation. This brings us to the sixth devastating pattern, the betrayal of total abandonment in the dark. Consider the story of Anicius Manlius Severinus Boethius, one of the most brilliant philosophers and statesmen of the ancient world. Boethius served as a high-ranking official under Theodoric, the Ostrogothic king of Italy. Boethius devoted his entire life to justice. He defended the poor, fought against corrupt government officials, and used his wealth to feed the hungry. He was surrounded by dozens of political allies and friends who praised his wisdom and swore eternal loyalty to him. Then, a sudden political storm hit. Boethius was falsely accused of treason by corrupt senators who hated his integrity. Overnight, the king ordered Boethius to be arrested, stripped of his lands, and thrown into a cold dungeon in Pavia to await execution. In an instant, every single one of Boethius's friends vanished. Not one senator stood up to defend his name. Not one ally visited his cold cell. The very people who had feasted at his table, borrowed his money, and called him brother, scrambled to publicly denounce him just to protect their own skin. They erased his name from public records as if he had never existed. Sitting in that dark, freezing cell, listening to the heavy footsteps of his executioners outside, Boethius picked up a piece of parchment and wrote his immortal masterpiece, The Consolation of Philosophy. He realized that the collapse of his fortunes was actually a profound gift. It had instantly burned away every fake friend, every hollow alliance, and every illusion, leaving him with the only thing that could never be stolen, his own unshakable virtue. Have you ever experienced a moment in your life where the lights went out, a sudden illness, a financial collapse, a public failure, and you looked around only to find yourself standing completely alone? That darkness is a brutal, necessary illumination. It exposes the parasites who were only attracted to your light. The people who disappear when the storm hits were never truly in your life, they were merely spectators enjoying the show. Do not mourn their absence. Thank the storm for clearing your court of traitors. Now, we must address the seventh and most tragic betrayal of all, the betrayal that you commit against yourself. The worst betrayal is not when a friend lies to you, when a partner leaves you, or when an ally sells you out. The worst betrayal is when you compromise your own values, your own boundaries, and your own intuition just to keep the approval of people who don't even respect you. How many times have you felt a deep, gut instinct warning you that someone was untrustworthy, yet you ignored it because you were lonely? How many times have you allowed someone to disrespect you repeatedly, making excuses for their toxic behavior, because you were afraid of being alone? Every time you trade your peace of mind to keep an unfaithful person in your life, you are betraying yourself. You are stabbing your own soul in the back to protect the feelings of someone who wouldn't drop a tear if you fell tomorrow. So how did the greatest Stoic masters handle the inevitable reality of human betrayal without becoming bitter, paranoid, or cold? Look at how the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius responded when his closest friend and top military general, Avidius Cassius, betrayed him. Cassius was commanding the Eastern legions when a false rumor spread that Marcus Aurelius was dying of illness. Instead of checking on his emperor, Cassius immediately declared himself emperor, mobilized his troops, and prepared to march on Rome to seize power. When Marcus Aurelius received the news, he didn't fly into a rage. He didn't execute Cassius's family members who were living in Rome. He didn't curse fate. He gathered his soldiers, looked at them with calm sadness, and said, "I am only afraid of one thing, that Cassius might take his own life before I have the chance to forgive him, show him mercy, and prove that true friendship can survive even treason." When Cassius was eventually assassinated by his own officers before Marcus could reach him, Marcus Aurelius wept. He refused to execute the co-conspirators, protected Cassius's children, and ordered that all private letters belonging to the traitor be burned unread so that no one else in Rome could be prosecuted for treason. Marcus Aurelius understood the ultimate Stoic shield against betrayal: you cannot control the honesty of others, but you have absolute, total authority over how you respond to their deceit. When someone betrays you, do not let them transform you into a bitter, suspicious monster. Do not give them the power to destroy your trust in humanity. Recognize that their betrayal is a reflection of their sickness, not your worth. Forgive them, not because they deserve your forgiveness, but because your soul deserves peace. Cut them out of your life with surgical precision, lock the door behind them, and keep walking your path with an open heart, an unbending mind, and absolute dignity. You can steal a man's money, burn his home, and slander his name, but no traitor on this earth can ever steal a mind that knows its own true power. If you are ready to build a soul that remains completely unshakable even when you have been stripped of everything you own, do not turn away now. Subscribe right now to the Stoic Path for another similar content titled, Have Nothing. When you have nothing, you learn these 7 brutal truths. Protect your heart, master your boundaries, and reclaim your power today.